The October. Mr. Castillo, will you call the roll, please? And I'm here.
Jamie Bell. Tina Certain. Nicholas Hill.
Here.
Dr. Murmur. Joshua Nate.
Here.
Jason Sanchez. And Stephanie Certain.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. Before I do an adoption of the agenda, I would like to suggest that we move the old business to the end so that the two relatively brief new business will be completed before we get into inclusionary zoning, which is going to probably take the rest of the evening. So without any objection, I would assume somebody would give me a motion to approve that modified agenda.
So moved. Putting the new business ahead of the old business.
Does that have to be seconded?
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any objections? Seeing none, it's approved. At this time, I would like, we could have a motion to approve the minutes too, if anybody is prepared to do that.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we've got that. I guess I'll read the agenda statement. The City of Gainesville encourages civil public speech. Disruptive behavior is not permitted during city commission meetings. Please do not bring food, drinks, props, signs, posters, or similar materials into the auditorium. Cheering and applause are only permitted during the proclamation special recognition portion of the meeting, which we have none tonight. At this time, is there any member of the public who would wish to make a statement or comment that is not on our agenda tonight? In that case, Mr. Castillo, would you read the first of our new business items?
2023-1041 Lighthouse EPC Special Use Permit. This is a request to expand an existing church with a new sanctuary building, site infrastructure improvements, and associated accessory buildings.
Ms. Mullins, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Good evening. Obviously, I'm not Nathaniel Chan, but he could not be with us tonight. He did put this presentation and the staff report together, so I am here presenting on his behalf and did review all the materials with him as well. So to start off, the property in question here is located at 615 Southeast 25th Street. It is located just north of Hawthorne Road. The existing use of the property is a place of religious assembly. The zoning for the property is a mixed zoning. It's RSF1 and MU1, so both mixed use and single family, and I'll show you the zoning map here in a moment. The parcel is about 10.5 acres in size, and the request is a special use permit to allow a facilities expansion with a new church sanctuary, site infrastructure improvements, and associated accessory buildings. So these are the land use and zoning maps. The zoning map you'll see on the right. The property is here, if you can see where my laser is pointing. So it's got MU1 on the front of the property, or the more southern portion, that's abutting Hawthorne Road. And then the rear portion of the property is RSF1. That RSF1 zoning is what necessitates the special use permit review by you all for the expansion of the existing church. This is the conceptual site plan. North is oriented here to the right. So Hawthorne Road is up on the left here. So like I mentioned, there is an existing facility here. The main access to the site will remain on Southeast Hawthorne Road. What the applicant is looking to do initially is build a new sanctuary building at about 15,000 square feet, and that is on the right here. There are some other auxiliary and ancillary buildings that they'd like to have in the future. This larger building is a future planned addition. Right now, what they're looking to do are some parking lot improvements, stormwater improvements, and adding the large building there at about 15,000 square feet. The site design in its entirety will be reviewed at development plan review, separate from this process. So this is another look at the site with a few more details on some of the specifics of what are being proposed. The parking area is proposed to be expanded to 125 parking spaces, including 2 handicap parking spaces, in addition to 14 bicycle spaces. This does meet the city's code requirements for maximum parking allowances. You may remember the city recently made some changes in the land development code, not requiring minimum parking, but actually requiring a maximum number of spaces. So this does meet that requirement. Additionally, as I mentioned, other aspects of the site, including stormwater and things like that, will be reviewed with site plan review. These are the conceptual elevations for the new building. The drawing that you see on the top is the front view of the building, or the west elevation. Then there's the back of the building, a couple of views of the side of the building. It will be required to meet design requirements for the mixed-use 1 zoning district, which largely include glazing requirements as really the primary item of design that's reviewed in that zoning district. So staff did review the permit application in relation to section 30-5.23 in the Land Development Code, and did find that the request meets review criteria. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the Land Development Code. The use is compatible with the existing land use pattern and future uses. There will not be adverse effects to health, safety, or welfare, neighboring properties, parking, loading, things of that nature. Public utilities are available. The screening and buffers that are proposed are appropriate, and the hours of operation will not adversely impact adjacent properties. So with special use permits, we usually see at least a few conditions of approval adopted as part of the approval process. So we have the standard condition that we see with pretty much every special use permit, that the use has to abide by the noise ordinance. The second condition is also a pretty standard one, requiring the applicant to apply for development plan review. They actually have already applied for that. It's already started to be reviewed by other departments. So don't see any issues with them meeting these conditions. And that concludes my presentation. The applicant is here for questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Mullins. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, does the applicant want to make a presentation or just be available for questions?
I think they're just here for questions.
Okay, that's fine. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Seeing none, I'll open it to a public hearing, and if anybody from the public would like to comment on this special use permit request. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion or comments or discussion. Don't be shy.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve item 2023-1041. Is that how we're supposed to be calling it? Or LD 22-000166. We have 2 numbers now on the agenda, so I'm not sure which one is right.
Yeah, one of these, you scribe number, the other one is a project.
The special use permit based on the evidence in the staff report and the presentation this evening.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second from Mr. Hall. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Good luck to you. Mr. Castillo, would you do the next one, please?
Second item on the agenda, 2023-1043, Line X Wellfield Special Use Permit. Line X of Gainesville, an automotive servicing and repair establishment, is located within the tertiary wellfield protection zone. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider the application submitted by Line X of Gainesville for a wellfield special use permit. And I'll be doing the presentation. Good evening, Chair and City Plan Board members. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo. I'm a planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you this evening is a request for a wellfield special use permit for the Line X company. Their they're an automotive service company that specializes in linings of automotive linings, and they use a special process to do so, which the applicant can go into. So the property in question is located at 4333 Northwest 6th Street. It's located in between Northwest 6th Street and Northwest 13th Street. If you're going to want to get really technical, it's located between Northwest 6th Street and Northwest 6th Street. That's kind of weird. There's a CSX line that's moving right behind the property. The current use is warehouse. There used to be like a boxing gym type of use before, but as of right now, it's a warehouse use. And the size of the property is 0.56 acres. The current land use on the property is industrial, with the current zoning district being limited industrial. The proposed use on this property is compliant with both of these as far as allowed uses. The property in question is located within the tertiary wellfield zone, and as such, our land development code requires them to obtain a special use permit, a wellfield special use permit. So as part of our review for the wellfield special use permit, there are obviously certain criteria and certain aspects that we as staff are looking for. One of those aspects is its consistency with a comprehensive plan. Staff has reviewed the application before you and has determined that this is consistent with our comprehensive plan, both in the use, being that the underlying land use supports the zoning district, and that zoning district allows for the use that is before you right now, and also is consistent with requirements concerning the wellfield protection as well as environmental protections in general. Now, there are further criteria found in our land development code that the application has to meet. One of the set of criteria is for the wellfield special use permit. You can see those criteria here, and I can answer any questions associated with these criteria. The full explanation is located in your backup report, but staff has found that the application before you meets these criteria. And there's also one of the criteria for the wellfield special use permit is that it also meets the criteria for a regular special use permit. And again, these criteria are outlined in detail in your backup report. You can see those criteria here, but staff has found that the application before you also meets these criteria. Now, at this point, I do want to clarify something within the report. There is inconsistency between what the report is stating and a condition on the site. The report is stating that there is no septic tank and that there is connection to a sewer network, but unfortunately that is actually not the case. The site does have a septic tank, but there are no sewer connections for the property. And so the existing septic tank, based on our land development code, is allowed to remain because there is no infrastructure for the applicant to connect to. And in existence, the septic tank is, I believe, 9,000 gallons, and it's designed, or it's currently being used to service the bathrooms of the property. The use currently, or the proposed use the septic would serve similar uses with the similar, what it's doing now. And one of the conditions the staff would like to propose is if in the future the current use is extended or somehow the intensity is increased, that at that time the applicant would or renovate or bring up to modern standards the existing septic tank, or if there's an infrastructure that is laid as far as sewer is concerned, that they connect to the sewer. So with that, staff's recommendation is approval of the Wellfield special use permit with the condition that they, at the time of, if there is an increase in intensity or size of the project, that they renovate the existing septic tank or connect to an infrastructure of sewer. And with that, I am open to any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Any questions from the board? Dr. Murmur?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, can you repeat the first part of the addition you want us to add? I heard the part about sewer, but you said if what happens, you would want them to upgrade their septic tank?
Sure, if there's an increase in size in the proposed development, or if there's an increase in intensity, then they would be required to improve or bring up to current standards the existing septic.
Any other questions for Mr. Castillo? I have one. This is some kind of a coating business. There isn't much of that waste that's going to go into the septic tank, is there?
The intended use currently doesn't use hardly any water, at least to our understanding. So the runoff to the underlying areas would be minimal. And they do have containment plans, mitigation containment plans in place that they would follow in the event that any type of spill or anything of that sort were to occur.
So basically, we're not putting whatever minimal amount of pollution might come through out into a drain field someplace?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Castillo? Is there, I'm sorry, Mr. Hill?
Hey, Chair. How far is the nearest sewer line, just out of curiosity? Do you know?
The exact number I'm not aware of. We connected with GRU and they've assured us that the sewer lines that are currently in existence are not able to service
Okay.
this property.
That was my follow-up. Thank you.
Does the petitioner have a presentation?
They are here today. I don't believe they have a presentation, but they're here and available for any questions you may have for them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioners from staff? I'm sorry, from the board? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Castillo. I'll open it to public comment. If there's any member of the public that would like to comment on this special use permit and special well permit.
Folks Chanel from Sierra Club. So how are you going to monitor an automotive facility with the runoff that usually comes from automotive facilities being right in a wetlands area? How is that going to be monitored? And what about the species that are in that wetlands? It says, you know, with the comprehensive plan that you guys have a protection of listed species in the wetlands. So, you know, oil, mechanical fluid running off, how are you going to protect those species and keep the public updated on that?
I'm going to ask Jenny, who's our environmental planner here, to speak some light into that.
Thank you.
question.
Hi. So it's not something that's actually water.
Would you state your
Sorry.
name, please? Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jenny Ford. I'm the environmental coordinator. It's something that's not really water soluble, so it really isn't going to be getting into the water systems. It will become ammonia and CO2, so it won't really get into it, and then the nature of resin really would stick to the soil. So if there was containment that would happen, it would be a soil remediation. It wouldn't really travel too far off-site.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Dr. Murmur?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we approve petition LD 23-113 Line X Wellfield Special Use Permit with the conditions that if there's an increase in size or intensity of the development, the applicant will upgrade their septic system. And also that if sewer service becomes available for the property, the applicant will connect to the city sewer system.
Thank you, Dr. Murmer. We have a motion. 1 second. He kind of jumped in and before we close the public hearing. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak to this matter? Thank you very much. We now have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Can I just get a clarification?
Sure.
Just now? Would they have the choice of expanding their septic tank, or would they be required to connect to the sewer system if it was close enough?
If the use, the size of the use or the intensity of the use is expanded, they would be required to either update their septic system if there is no infrastructure in place at that time. But if there is an infrastructure in place at that time, they would be required to connect to that infrastructure.
I'm happy to second now.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We can now move on to our inclusionary zoning old business.
Items 2022-677 and item 2022-679 will be read together. So 2022-677, Inclusionary Zoning Comprehensive Plan Amendment. This is the City of Gainesville request to amend the comprehensive plan's future land use element to change density bonus language and allow bonus provisions associated with inclusionary zoning efforts. And 2022-679, Inclusionary Zoning Amendments to the Land Development Code. The City of Gainesville requests to amend the Land Development Code to provide regulations establishing inclusionary zone and amend the current bonus manual. And for those presentations, I'll be doing that. Good evening, board members, chair. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you this evening is a proposal from the city for inclusionary zoning policy to be instituted in the city of Gainesville. So just to give you a little bit of a navigational rundown, if you will, today's presentation will start off with a short background. Most of you, I'm sure, have heard of or what I'm about to speak of today, but there might be somebody listening to online or via TV that may want that kind of background. So we'll be going through a background, then we'll be doing a definition for inclusionary zoning, the proposal of the cities for inclusionary zoning, and then the location and execution of inclusionary zoning. We'll finish off with the opportunity for questions and remarks. So, as you are well aware, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but as you're well aware, the city of Gainesville has an affordable housing situation that is not, it's not positive. Building affordable housing here has become almost non-existent, and for people that are living within the city of Gainesville, they're finding that housing is too expensive. There's not that much available that's affordable, and there's not really a diversification of housing types that could potentially mitigate that. So with that said, the city is proposing the inclusionary zoning policy that is before you to hopefully partially address the situation. Now, the inclusionary zoning policy is something that was directed by the commission in 2019, and for that matter, we hired a consulting group, HRNA, who did an analysis of our current market and has proposed that inclusionary policy would be applicable to our city. Staff has also done some research as well as gone out into the community and received community input, and the culmination of all that effort is what you will see here today. So inclusionary zoning. Inclusionary zoning is a policy, a land use policy tool
that is designed to require affordable housing units from the development of other like multifamily developments. And the way that works is that there's a certain percentage of affordable housing units that will be required from a new development, and in return there will be an offset provision that will be placed so that the cost of the new affordable housing development will be offset by these provisions. And so what you have here is a little example as to how that looks. A market rate development will occur. The inclusionary zoning regulations will require a certain percentage of those units to be affordable. They will receive an additional density bonus to offset the costs of these new affordable housing units. Now, for inclusionary zoning policies, they're not a new thing. They have been around since 1970s, and over 1,000 municipalities across our nation have some form of an inclusionary zoning policy. Now, looking at all the policies available out there, there's about 6 keys, if you will, that are consistent with each policy. The first one is target units, and this refers to how many units are required to be set aside from a new development. Then there's the target tenant, meaning who are the people that we are identifying that will be residing in these new affordable housing units. Then there's a target threshold. In essence, it's the number of units that a development is providing that will trigger the requirement for inclusionary zoning for that development. There's a target incentive, and this is a reference to whether the policy is mandatory or voluntary. And there's target characteristics, and this refers to how a unit looks and when the unit will be available. Lastly, there's target bonus, and that is the bonus or other incentives that can be used to fully offset the cost of the new affordable housing units. Excuse me. So in order to place this policy in play here at the City of Gainesville, there are certain things that have to occur. One of the things that have to occur is the amendment of our text and regulations. And one of the documents that have to be amended is our comprehensive plan. Within this document, there's language that limits the amount of bonuses available for each land use within our city. And so in order to allow for the density bonuses associated with affordable housing provided from inclusionary zoning policies, we have to amend that language in order to increase the available density bonuses that each land use provides. And so what staff is doing is we're proposing to have those amendments in play so that when the policies and regulations come into effect via the Land Development Code, the execution of density bonuses will be able to occur. And this is a fair example of what we are proposing, the type of language, but within your backup there is a broken down detailed example of what that language looks like for each individual land use item. That is actually not. So aside from corrections and amendments to our comprehensive plan, there's also the Land Development Code that must be amended. And so what you see before you right now is the efforts to consolidate the existing density bonuses that we have in the city and redirect them to focus on bonuses for affordable housing. Currently, the density bonuses that we have in play, for the most part, were instituted back in 2005 and are seldom used and have not been amended or updated since that time. So we are proposing that instead of leaving it in play, we can redirect those density bonuses and direct them over to efforts of affordable housing as they are associated with our inclusionary zoning policy. This right here is a visual of what the text will be within our Land Development Code. This is just an example, but the full text is available in your backup. And again, it would just be providing some language to direct and show the processes and how the inclusionary zoning policy actually looks. So just to kind of give you a little rundown of what we're doing. The proposal before you is to provide 10% affordable housing, or excuse me, 10% of the units provided as affordable housing, targeting a population of 80% AMI. Just a quick description for those who are viewing online or via TV. AMI is a number that refers to a medium or a number that where 50% of the population is above that number and 50% of the population is below that number. So 50% of the population make a certain amount, 50% of the population make below that medium number. And so when we are looking at affordable housing, looking at who qualifies for these affordable housing units, we compare their household income to that AMI number. And that AMI number for the city of Gainesville, I believe, is 40,000. I'm not going to quote a crazy number, but so in essence, what we'll be looking for is somebody that makes 80% of that AMI number. As far as in lieu fee, we do have a provision within what we're proposing that there is a fee in lieu of, which would allow some flexibility for development in the event that they cannot provide the affordable housing units required. And there are certain situations that I can go over, but for the most part, it's just to provide that flexibility. There is a threshold or a development scale. This is that condition that I mentioned, that there's a certain number of units that a development provides that kicks it into a requirement for inclusionary zoning, and that number is 10 units as of right now. There is an incentive, I mentioned, that is either voluntary or mandatory. For our proposal, it's a mandatory proposal, and that's why we have the 30% density bonus to offset the costs of the affordable housing units that are being provided. The character of the units, they are the same units, if you will, as regular market rate units. They're designed to be equal as far as the construction, the materials being used, any services associated with the units as a whole. All in all, they're supposed to be the same. What we don't want is for the affordable housing units being provided to somehow be different and lesser quality just because they're affordable. Something else is that these units are to come online at the same time. So when a market rate unit comes online for tenancy, like for people to move into, the affordable housing units will come online as well for people that are meeting our affordable housing AMI requirement. So fractional units, that just basically states that when you're doing calculations, if you have a fraction, say 1.5, that we will round up or round down based on standard round up and round down practices. And lastly, the bonus is the 30% density bonus that we are using to offset the costs for these affordable housing units being provided. And in the event that is demonstrated not to fully offset the cost, then there are other incentives that we can use, such as fee waivers, relaxing of the regulations within zoning districts, and other measures as is applicable. So this is just a quick recap of what I just mentioned. Again, 10% affordable housing required from the development, targeting 80% AMI household income, and that will trigger an offset of 30% density bonus for developments providing 10 units or more, and you can kind of see a quick rundown there. Along with the required provision for inclusionary zoning, we do have a section or a part of the proposal that is designed for developments that want to provide more than what they're required. So this is more of a voluntary provision. And the way this works is it works in intervals of 10. So you either provide 10 units more or 10% less or deeper affordability. And with each interval, you're looking at receiving a 5% density bonus offset. And this will eventually max out at 50%. So you can combine any of these intervals, either 10% deeper affordability with 10 units addition, etc. Or you can just do one of them. There's also other benefits that can be included with the density bonus as it is determined to be needed. We also did a threshold study. There has been some questions concerning the level that would be required for developments to pass in order for them to be required to include or meet the inclusionary zoning policy. We looked at developments under 51 and developments over 51 units, and we looked at years 2021 through 2023. What we found is that units below 51, we had 8 developments within those years. In total, they are providing 185 units, and the potential stating that if inclusionary zoning policy was instated or was present at that time when these developments were occurred, then we would have obtained 19 affordable housing units from the 8 developments. As far as developments over 51, similar analysis, we found that 20 units were actually available between the years 2021 and 2023, providing 3,906 units. And the potential affordable housing units that could have been acquired from that is 391. As of this moment, staff is still proposing to have the 10-unit threshold. We see it as any potential unit is a good unit, but staff, of course, seeks your direction and would be wanting to get your input on this matter. Another question that has come up is the who or what entity would be overseeing the inclusionary zoning policy. We found that the city will actually be the entity that will be overseeing this policy. Before you should have an example of the form that will be used to create that contract between the city and a developer. And this effort would be a combination of housing, planning, code enforcement, and other departments as needed, but the oversee of this policy, again, will be the city. I'll give you a moment to kind of look over that proposal.
This has been developed by the city attorney?
Correct.
Does this reflect some of the ones we've already done?
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
You can.
And this is the, because I read the 3 examples of MOUs that were in the backup. This is basically the first MOU that's in the backup minus the specific third party and developer and address.
Correct. And we would use, for the most part, we would use that template in order for a development to come in, give us the details, and create that contract between the developer and us.
And is that part already included in Appendix A?
No, so this item did not make it into the backup, so that's why I brought it to you physically, because unfortunately it didn't make it into the.
Excellent, thank you.
Dr. Murmer, those of us who have hearing augmentation, try to pull your microphone out from behind your laptop. Thanks.
So really quickly, are there any questions right as of this moment?
I just have one comment on your proposals so far.
Sure.
One, this isn't specifically for poor people, it's also for workforce housing.
Correct.
And I think that's an important distinction to make. Second, the reason we have to kind of go through this procedure of density and stuff like that is because we're trying to operate within the strictures of the state requirement that we fully compensate developers in the event that we require affordable housing.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
So I wanted to just really quickly go through our timetable. As you're aware, we did bring this item before you on the 28th of September as an information item. We received feedback and direction from the board. Then today, we're bringing the proposal before you with that feedback incorporated into the proposal. And we are looking at bringing this item before the commission on January with hopefully your vote. And then that first reading will be again in January, and then depending on that reading, we'll see where it goes from there.
Keeping in mind that that timetable doesn't recognize that the plan board specifically has been dealing with inclusionary zoning for the last year and a half.
That's correct. This is
And I
a-
think that's an
Or more.
important thing,
I
or
mean,
more.
since the first PD that it was
So
in.
I think it's really important that people understand this is not the first time, the first instance. We've been discussing this, and to some extent, the proposal you're giving us today reflects a lot of what we've done in the last year.
That's correct. That's a good observation, Chair. And just to add to that, this also has been vetted by the Affordable Housing Committee, and that with the help of staff, we have gone out through several parts of our city and conducted public meetings, received feedback from our community, as well as we've spoken to different organizations, received feedback from them, one of them being the Alachua County Housing, or the Alachua County Labor Coalition, as well as, I always forget there's GRA, I always forget their, oh my God, they're gonna hate me for that. Yeah, but we have reached out to certain organizations and certain sections of our city to get additional feedback. And with that, I say thank you, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Dr. Murma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we have to, just a technical question, make a motion or do anything to get this in the record? This template?
To do what?
Put this template MOU in the record?
No, I think it's here. That's why we're doing it.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Just wanna make sure.
And that will also be included in the backup that goes to the commission, by the way.
Yeah, we're gonna approve something or not and send it on to the commission with all of the parts that they're going to approve or asking to approve.
Well, I just wanna, just make it clear for anybody who might be watching at home and concerned about transparency that this is gonna be in the record for this evening. That's all.
Any questions for Mr. Castillo? I appreciate the work we've done. I think it's getting there. I appreciate the fact that this is going to be implemented with a city component. I think that's critical. And I'm counting on our chief operating officer to follow through and hire the person that he claimed he was hiring last time. And I don't mean to imply that I doubt it. I just want to make sure that we are doing that with the idea that this is going to be a smooth running affair. I appreciate the contract that we've done so that we'll have a standard contract, and I think it's going to be critical that that going forward, that the city develop methods of not only maintaining the affordable housing structure, but keeping track of how it's performing. Any other comments, Ms. Sutton?
Yeah, I would echo that. I know I wasn't here last month, but I did watch the meeting, and so I appreciate, staff coming up and, realizing that it does sort of make sense for the city to take some ownership and dedicating, some future staff time to this. I think that's great. I also really appreciate you all putting this table together of the units. I will talk more about that, but that's not so much a question, but I appreciate the research that we did.
Any more comments from the board? And if not, we'll open it to the public for comment on inclusionary zoning. Mr. Blount, come on up.
Thank you. Some parts of this plan are good. There's some things that need deeper consideration. For instance, the fact that there's no ownership component whatsoever. So we're saying, yeah, we need more affordable housing, but low to moderate income people should never aspire to ownership. Is that what we want to say as a city? I feel like I'm playing back a recording. I've said this so many times. I want to refer you, because time doesn't permit to get spoon-feed it, to sources like National Low-Income Housing Coalition and Urban Land Institute. And you can look at many examples of where inclusionary zoning has worked and not worked. First of all, gearing it to 80% AMI is skimming the cream of the crop. The bulk of our need, the bulk of people who are suffering from lack of affordable housing, who are homeless or crowded in, are well below 80%. This should go down to 50%. Acquiring a 10% set aside is just fluff. That's going to get you a tiny result that's not going to come near to meeting the need that we have. It should be 20% set aside. You should be going to 50% AMI. I love that it said 99 years. That's amazing to make the affordability last 99 years. And that's exemplary amongst experiments in inclusionary zoning around the country. But if we really want to make a difference, or we just want to pass a showcase law, look what we did. This is, and the idea of a fee in lieu of, it means you're going to end up with a pot of money and no place to put affordable housing that does not offer important amenities for the people who need to go into that housing. In other words, NIMBY is going to stop you from putting this housing in places where the persons who need it might have access to good schools, mass transportation, good markets, health care, and employment. You can look at where this community started with public housing years ago. The first and largest public housing here was where Woodland Park is now. That was the urban-rural fringe back then. And the idea was to glom together all these poor people, men, black people, out of mind, out of sight. The other issue that is very important is to not concentrate in poverty. That's why it's important to achieve some infill in higher opportunity neighborhoods that is affordable. Then it makes sense to put market housing in neighborhoods that are economically stressed. The people from Lincoln Estates have scolded the city about trying to put affordable housing near them. But as long as we're a community that says for affordable housing only over there, only in that corner, only in the southeast, then putting market rate housing there is cutting out opportunities for affordable housing. But we need to move to a housing pattern that is mixed income all over the jurisdiction. And the purpose of that is to undo the negative history of redlining and discrimination. All that's illegal now, supposedly, although we know it still goes on. But economic segregation of housing is 80% or better proxy for racial segregation. So unless we achieve mixed income housing and a huge number of units, we're not going to make a difference. I hope you went through all this work and all these months of consideration of this to make a difference. We need affordable housing. Let's see, what was the other point? Oh, you already made the point about the legislature requiring compensation to developers. And so all the incentives that have been offered for over 20 years, the planning and housing people for city and county have tried to get affordable housing for a couple generations, or a full generation, and have gotten basically goose egg for their effort. And these setback bonuses or density bonuses, reduced setbacks, expedited permits, all are ways that will compensate the developers. It doesn't have to mean cash. So I'm glad you pointed that out. But I hope you're putting in all this work to make a difference, not just to be seen in public eye. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blount. I would respond to that. This is not a piece of fluff, and there is not an incremental, affordable housing is going to be an incremental thing. We need to do it in 100 different places. And the fact that this doesn't solve everything tomorrow does not mean we shouldn't do it today. And I think we've addressed your issue of not segregating. This puts them everywhere. You understand, this board passed an end to exclusionary zoning last year, which the city commission reversed. And so we're doing a lot of incremental stuff. I don't think any of us are the slightest bit interested in putting on a show or doing fluff or trying to be performative. And I think this is a good start, but I have no idea, I don't believe anybody thinks that this is the cure-all and will fix everything today. So I thank you for your comments. Anybody else want to speak? Dr. Murmer.
Oh, no, after public comment.
I'm sorry?
I just want to be first after public comment.
I think there's still public comment.
Yeah, the chair?
We'll get there.
Oh, he has cards. Swan has cards.
Yeah. So John Michael Fernandez is.
Good. We're not used to filling out cards, sorry.
Try to do it by the book. But good evening, City Plan Board members. My name is John Michael Fernandez. I am the author of the few letters I've been sending to you for the past year. I am the local government affairs manager for the North Central Florida Apartment Association. Excuse me. And thank you for the time to speak this evening. The city's current draft of the inclusionary zoning policy has potential to adversely affect the apartment industry and the city's future growth. NCFAA members have long advocated for a variety of tangible solutions to address housing affordability, including streamlining the development process, encouraging the use of property tax discounts to produce and preserve attainable housing, and much more. NCFAA is supportive of policy solutions that are intended to increase the supply of housing, especially the development of affordable and workforce housing. However, we disagree with the notion that such a policy should be mandatory. NCFAA fears that a mandatory policy may inadvertently discourage the development or renovation of multifamily housing, and the association acknowledges the need for affordable housing in the city and supports voluntary programs similar to the one in my previous letters I mentioned in Palm Bay and other jurisdictions across the state. And I really wanted to touch on HB 7103 requirements now. HB 7103 is clear that the city must must provide incentives to offset all costs of the developer for its affordable housing contribution. This is an extremely high hurdle for the city's IZ policy to meet, and that is why the association has advocated time and time again for deepening the amount of incentives to ensure that this statutory requirement is met. The association recognizes that the city already has an appeals process for when a developer can provide evidence that incentives provided by the IC policy would not fully offset all costs associated with the set-aside units. This provides developers the opportunity to hold the city accountable and to ensure that all statutory requirements are met. Up until the most recent draft of the policy, the city would have required developers to contract with a third-party manager for the set-aside affordable units. This was extremely concerning to the association, and we appreciate that the city has opted to keep the compliance component in-house. However, the policy does state, and verbatim, the applicant must enter into a management agreement with the city to administer the affordable set-aside units. This agreement must address marketing, applicant screening, and the process for establishing rental rates, monitoring fair housing requirements, and other elements as determined by the city manager designee. The association would appreciate some clarification. I know that the template was made available today. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to read that, and I look forward to after the meeting. But we would just like some clarification on what an agreement would be with the city, and how those items required to be in the agreement will be carried out.
Come get
and
one.
administered. Will the agreement simply provide details on how the owner-operator of the apartment community will administer the set-aside units, including marketing, screening, et cetera? Is it more of a management agreement? Because the wording is very vague to the association and our members, and we just want to ensure that all the units developed, including the set-aside affordable units, are wholly managed professionally by the owner and operator. And to close out, thank you for your time and your dedication to the City of Gainesville. And the North Central Florida Apartment Association looks forward to continuing the dialogue and working with the city as this moves forward to the City Commission. I will be happy to try to answer any questions you may have. I'll try my best. And I did want to give some props to Juan Castillo. Throughout this whole process, he's been very kind, very useful and helpful to the association. Answered all my emails in a timely manner, so I just wanted to thank you on the record. I really appreciate it. And I will take a look at this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for comments, discussion. Dr. Murmer, hold on for 1 second, let somebody else talk for a second. You can go next, okay? Ms. Sutton.
So I have a couple of things. I think I'm happy overall with where we are. I think we've made vast improvements as we moved along, thinking about how we're going to administer this to really have a better program. There are just a couple of changes that I would like to see as we vote on this evening. I really appreciate the data on the projects that have been permitted and the number of units. I've expressed concern that this is potentially an onerous process for someone that's running a very small complex. If you're doing 10 or 12 units and you're just going to have one affordable unit, it seems like a lot of work on an ongoing basis for one unit. I would like to see us put that threshold closer to 30. I think once you have 3 units, it's kind of worth all of the process for the city. I mean, for the city staff time as well. It makes it a little bit more worth everybody's while. So I would suggest that we change the 10 unit minimum to 30 units. I know that staff kind of took the 50 unit break because that's where the major development plan break is, but I don't think that that's overcomable. Not overcomable in the review process. I don't know that that has to align with the same rules of the major development plan. So I would suggest 30. Personally, I'm open to it going up to 50. The other change that I would like to see is under enforcement, where we basically say we're going to fine people $500 per unit per day that the owner doesn't have the number of affordable housing units, essentially being provided. There is some like natural turnover process, and there's some time between tenants where units are vacant. I know, like myself, I'm a landlord, and usually it's hard for us even to go less than a month or two with our houses. I mean, that's a little bit more involved than an apartment unit, but just by the time you get everything straightened out and everything out with the old tenant and you advertise it and you lease it, there's some time there. So I think we need to allow people a little bit of a cushion. I mean, even, the student housing complexes typically kick everybody out by the end of July, beginning of August, and then let them all move back in a couple weeks later. I think that's a normal part of the business. So I'd like us to build in, beyond a 14-day turn period or something. I'd like us to build that in here because the way that this is worded now, you know, if it was empty for 2 weeks, which I don't think is that unusual, they would have to pay $500 a day. And I just don't think that that is a reasonable thing. We have to understand that, you know, people don't move in the day after someone moves out. And particularly if it's a smaller complex that only has 1 or 2 units designated to be affordable, it's harder to like have an extra one rented out under the affordable policy to spare, to save them that fee. So those are the 2 things that I would like to suggest, going up to 30 units, and somehow in that enforcement section, working in a
60 days?
14-day, 30-day,
60
something.
days, yeah.
60 days is great. I think at least 2 weeks, a month might be a little bit better. I don't know if there was any discussion about that. I know I brought that up at a previous meeting, but I had a whole list of issues at that point. Now we're down to my final 2. Mr. Edelton.
Mr.
That's all I
Edelton,
have
have at it.
for today.
Thank you very much, Chair, board members. Forrest Edelton, Director of Sustainable Development and the Planning Division that has led this. So thank you all very much. This is exactly the feedback that we're looking for. The 10 versus the 50, somewhere in between there. Of course, staff is still confident that the 10 will get us more housing units, which we feel like is the directive that we've been given by the commission and our citizens. But in between the 10 and the 50, really in large part staff is amenable to, especially with the advice from you all. For the enforcement, what would be the easiest for sustainable development to operationalize is if that aligned with more of, along the same lines of what we do with our code enforcement for other issues. So if we did find that there was a violation for something, we issue a notice of violation, and in rough, our code enforcement officers give a reasonable amount of time to correct. Mm-hmm. Normally, for issues, well, really, it varies, but it doesn't often go beyond 60 days. Mm-hmm. It usually is within a month for the time to correct, and it is extremely rare that it would be less than the 2 weeks. So normally, what would be happening here is if for whatever reason, it was reported to our division, to our department, that this was out of compliance, I would suggest that it would be operationally easiest for us to send an officer out, verify whether or not that was true or not, and then operate under our existing parameters, if you will. So issue a notice of violation, reasonably state what that time to correct could be. So really, I think that flexibility there is still important. If it's at the beginning of the month, it may make a different number may make more sense than if it's at the end of the month or the middle of the month. It may make more sense if it's at the turnover for when students come back to town versus not. Elements like that, those are the things that we're looking for that kind of advice from you all for. But again, just to operationally, it would be easiest for us to really put into practice what we are already doing, in short.
So do you have a suggestion on how we could change this language to model the code enforcement process?
I would say to use existing code enforcement issuance of notice of violation practices and code enforcement practices for resolving the issue or the situation. Normally I do edits with a document in front of me, but this one I'm just riffing.
And I just have one more follow-up on that. So code enforcement, do they have a list of fines somewhere else? Is that like somewhere else in the code of ordinances or do we need to set this fine here? Do we need to set the $500, or does that really belong somewhere else, or does code enforcement decide on a case-by-case basis?
Frankly,
do we need to have the number here?
No, is my short answer. And
Okay.
I do appreciate that question. The maximum that we do or are allowed to do in code enforcement is $1,000 a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this was to try to come down from that,
Mm-hmm.
but also I think that it is appropriate to keep it in staff's hands to determine what is the most effective for resolving the situation. And for us, of course, we don't want to shut a unit down, we don't want to stop a business, we don't want to do a variety of things. What we do want is housing. And we want the targeted, as Mr. Castillo said, the targeted citizens in the housing. And that is what I think, if you are leaving the number up to staff, we can do that.
So do you feel comfortable with us, like, and you don't have the language right in front of you, but like, basically it says at such time as the property owner is found to be providing less affordable housing units than the percentage required, then it goes on to the fee and per day. Would you say the owner would be referred through the code enforcement process
Yes,
for applicable, fees and
for
time for
appropriate correction
remediation
of the
or
violation.
Okay.
And my assumption is code enforcement has some discretion in the sense that they go out and there may be an extenuating circumstance that allows them. I don't.
Absolutely.
I really don't want this to turn into some kind of punitive thing. I'm really interested in if there's a problem, getting it resolved as quickly as you can. But if it's, if there's some reason that is reasonable and there seems to be an imminent solution, I think we should be able to have the flexibility to work with that.
If I might, Chair, totally agree, and that would be our approach. It is not sustainable development's purview or even desire to be property managers. What we really want to do is what, of course, our commission has tasked us with doing, which is to make sure that we're achieving the goals. So especially with the new proposals that are in front of you for having an in-house housing advocate that can do a lot of the work with the code enforcement to really determine which units are meeting the criteria that was just presented to you today. I think that is an effective program.
Thank you. Anything else?
Nope, that's all my stuff.
Dr. Murmer, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Earleton. I was just going to say the same thing. I think adding a 14-day cushion or a 60-day cushion would actually deprive staff of the flexibility to be lenient and to make this work with the landlords. So thank you very much for bringing that up. I also want to note on the 10-unit threshold, it might seem like one unit isn't that much. That's a home for a family. And since 2021, if we had this policy in place, that would have been 19 homes for 19 families. And I think housing 19 families is something. With that said, I have a motion, 3 parts.
Wait, there's other lights blinking, please. We all get to talk.
Oh, I know, I thought there was discussion after motions.
Who's number 6? Is that Mr. Hall?
That was me.
Oh, okay, then Mr. Hall. No, sorry, my numbers are not on. Go ahead, Josh.
And I would like to bring up, because there was some historic district transition areas in some of that. I don't know if other people are interested in making this part of the motion.
Go.
Okay, within 100 feet of University Avenue, between 13th Street and 6th Street, height buffer zones wouldn't apply. 50 feet or you can read it for yourselves if you want on 138. I don't know. If you want me to read through it all, I can.
I at least explain what you're talking about.
As part of the
Yeah,
okay,
go ahead.
The historic buffer zones, there's like a pretty abrupt transition now. Like within 100 feet, you can't do any. You know what the heights are. Instead of these abrupt, they artificially keep the number of the units in the building lower. I'm like really.
I think what we're talking, Mr. Ney is talking about is that there are certain parts of basically land that is zoned for high intensity along University Avenue and 13th Street that back up closely to historic districts. The most notable one is you'll see there's virtually no development on the north side of University Avenue around the University of Florida, and that's because there's a historic district that hits the lot line right behind. So the issue then is we're kind of truncating a natural place for some of this multifamily housing to be built because of the step-down requirements of the historic districts. So his suggestion is that we have, in effect, moved that back.
And I know other people might want to put that in another proposal. My thing is, you know, the city will change what they want, like whether they want it or not, they can take it out later, right?
Well, if it's a good idea, we send it to the city. If it's not a good idea, we don't. So if you want to do it, we can do that. You can do it any way you want.
So would you mind if I jump in with a question for staff related to that?
Okay.
Have you all looked at how the Live Local Act would apply there? Would that override the historic transition? Because if it would, I think that's what's going to happen there. I mean, I can tell you a lot of people are very interested in taking advantage of the Live Local Act, and if they do that, we get 40% affordable units in that project. So has staff looked at that at all?
I do believe I don't know if this microphone is the microphone working?
Just yell.
So yeah, the Live Local Act, state law would override local law on height restrictions. I can tell you, we did speak internally on this issue. It was brought up, I think, at the last meeting and maybe a prior meeting. We spoke with the Historic Preservation Officer and just had some internal discussion. From staff's point of view, we believe this would be better served as part of a different discussion, just from our perspective, not necessarily tied to the inclusionary zoning question, but looking at it kind of as an individual issue, particularly since each historic district and their boundaries are different. I think this one in particular is a certain historic district that you're talking about. And there are others who would have opinions on changing those limits and buffers and things.
I guess part of what we're wondering is if the somewhat ironically named Live Local Act, since it's being imposed by non-local legislature, would in effect eliminate the barrier that we currently see.
I think so, based on everything we've discussed up to this point, yeah.
The impression I got when we were at the Florida Planners Association is that it pretty much, I mean, within almost a mile, I think.
Yeah, within a mile, you
Within
can
a
pick the
mile,
height, and you get the highest density.
You get the highest
jurisdiction.
density that's
Right.
available. So I'm not sure that's really an issue anymore at the point that the city recognizes that.
So, and what you would end up with, Josh, is actually something with 40% affordable units in that spot, and let them override the height restriction by providing 40% affordable units instead of our new 10%. So,
Yeah, but that's up to 120% AMI, so that's almost.
Right, it is, but it's 40% of the units, which is a pretty big number.
I think that should be a separate discussion. I think that that little tiny patch in the city might be resolved by the state. Personally, I mean, I just, I think 5 years from now, we are probably going to see something on some of those lots that have something to do with the Live Local Act. If I had a crystal ball.
I would also volunteer, and more to Mr. Blount's comments, we end up with a block of housing that's limited to no more than 80% of AMI. There's nothing that says we cannot further subsidize that, either with fee in lieu or through a variety of programs that are currently in existence. So the Gainesville Housing Authority will be placing many of these tenants and they have a number of programs that would allow them to subsidize those further. So anyway, that it's not, we're not quite as dumb as you think we are. Let me see,
Don't speak for me.
okay, except for Josh. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I actually had a quick question for the Apartment Association from the gentleman from the Apartment Association. I just want to first thank you for coming and writing all those letters. It sounds like you've been working pretty closely with staff and have kept it civil, and I know there's some concern among, some of the folks that comprise the association. And so I just wanted clarification on the position of the Apartment Association, who will be dealing with this a lot. Is it the Apartment Association's position that regardless of what offsets are provided, the association would not support a mandatory inclusionary zoning policy, period? Or is mandatory ever part of the conversation? Or is the position it's always voluntary, never mandatory, regardless of the offsets?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the question. I think the association, of course, accepts the premise that, the city needs affordable workforce housing. And that's why we've been working very closely with staff to try to bring a inclusionary zoning policy that is amenable to the industry and to the association. We would fully support a voluntary policy, let the free market and the developers come in and, decide if these incentives would be beneficial and feasible enough to build those set-aside units. We have construction costs and, wages and maintenance costs that are associated and with management of a multifamily property. And, we all see the inflation in the past few years. And so I think we just want to make sure that the developers are made whole, and, HB 7103 is met, and that incentives are fully offsetting any costs if this is a mandatory policy. I don't know if that answers your question. Or...
Yeah, it does. And, I'm sure I'm just putting you in a hard position, so feel free to just tell me to go pound sand. But I was just curious if the Apartment Association, if their opposition to a mandatory is not just cost, but more philosophical as well. There's no scenario in which a mandatory would be supported by the Apartment Association.
Well, I'm not here to say that we don't support it. Like I mentioned, we do support, trying to bring affordable workforce housing to the city. Is a mandatory policy that answer? We don't necessarily agree. Like I mentioned, we would want a voluntary program. But if it is going to be mandatory, we are going to work very closely with the city to make sure that, at the end of the day, when it is approved, I assume it's going to be approved tonight and at the city commission next year, that it's something that doesn't adversely affect development and the future growth of the city, and that we do bring those affordable workforce housing units. And we just want to make sure that it doesn't negatively affect the industry and stifle growth, inadvertently.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you coming out. Thank you
Absolutely.
for sharing that.
Thank you for your question, sir.
Dr. Murmer.
First, thank you, Mr. Hall, for those questions. I thought those were really good. May I please make a motion? Well,
Is there any other comments from the board? You're on.
thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, three-part motion.
I didn't get to say my last thing, which is, I support keeping it at 10 units. However, I recognize that it's potentially, it might be below the threshold. I also think we ought to at least consider, and keeping in mind, all of these can be changed if we find out things don't work the way we want. And I'm assuming that our staff will monitor this. The trouble is, it's a pretty long lead time on all of this stuff before we find out if any of it's working. But I would like that, make sure we all know that we have the ability to undo things that don't work. I appreciate everybody would like to voluntarily do the right thing, But of course, we've been voluntarily not doing the right thing now for 50 years. So I think maybe some incentive with a little bit of goosing might be better, because we clearly are not meeting our goals right now. With that, have at it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so I move that we, Part 1, approve the inclusionary zoning comprehensive plan amendment petition as proposed by city staff in attachment 2022-679B to the backup of item 2022-677, pages 7 through 9 in Appendix A. Part 2, approve the inclusionary zoning amendments to the Land Development Code petition as proposed by city staff in attachment 2022-679B to the backup of item 2022-679, pages 9 through 13 in Appendix A. Part 3, that the city offer the template memorandum of understanding provided to the city plan board in hard copy format this evening to both developers and third-party organizations responsible for overseeing the provision of affordable housing units and making sure that the inclusionary zoning requirements are met. The use of this template memorandum of understanding is optional, meaning that, you know, it's sort of like a, like the template leases that the Florida Bar offers, right? Like, you're not required to use that particular lease. You can negotiate, right? If a developer really needs some flexibility or whatever, that sort of trying to meet them halfway.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is avoid having everybody have to hire Clutch and Bludgeon and Steel and come up with their own thing from scratch.
Yeah, exactly.
As a former member of Clutch and Bludgeon and Steel. Is that it?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So can I ask a point of clarification? We're not changing the enforcement part?
No,
The code enforcement like we talked about? You want to leave it with the
I want to
$500
leave
day
it to
fee?
allow staff the flexibility.
I don't know that the current language allows flexibility. I think what we were talking about was how to build in flexibility. The language as it's written in the draft does not allow flexibility.
Oh, I might
Pretty
have missed-
clear, owners must pay a fee of $500 per unit per day for each day the owner is not in compliance.
Oh, I misunderstood, Mr. Earlton. So,
We were suggesting a change
I-
to this, so if your motion, it sounds like, does not include what we were talking about.
no, I'm okay adding that. I misunderstood what he was saying because I thought that he was saying that that was already in there.
No, we were gonna change the end of this.
Yep. So then I would add Part 4 to change the enforcement provision of the land use amendment to allow code enforcement to negotiate any penalties for failure to.
We really want to just let code enforcement use its normal procedures to enforce this.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Any other comments? We'll incorporate that into the motion. You got that one?
And thank you for pointing that out.
Anything else? Do I have a second for this? Be brave.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second from Mr. Hall. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
We've got 3 yeses and 2 nos, so I guess it passes. And at this point, what's the opposition at this point? You want
The
it at
number of
50?
units. I
Yeah.
think this is a lot. It's, even though we have a template, it's still a lot of work. I think it's a lot of staff time as well for that person to have to go to, 15 places around town that only have 1 unit each. I think on this table, we see it, that really, if we would have cut it off at 30, it was only 10 units out of we would have gotten 400. It's only 10 out of that, but process-wise, I'm an administrator. That's what I do. I'm an engineer and I'm an administrator. So you have 6 other properties, 6 other property owners, 6 other logistical nightmares for 10 units. Whereas we would have gotten, still gotten, 398 without those 6. So I don't think that it's worth the trade-off. I think it's gonna be, we're creating a difficult task for staff to chase down single units and smaller, developers that may not have a property manager and a, leasing office and.
Well,
It's-
and the other thing of why we should have done 51, and if the Live Local Act works, all of these units, you're gonna get a much higher number of people who are willing to put affordable housing up to 40%. And I'm not sure we shouldn't make the thing 51. I didn't get a chance to say that, but.
You already passed it, right?
but
Yeah,
I
it's already
understand.
past it.
Huh?
But my opposition
could
is purely
reconsider
on the
that.
number of units. Everything else,
We
I'm
could-
great with,
we
but I
could
think the number of
reconsider,
units,
yeah.
and partially just, kind of feeling bad for that future staff person who's gonna have to chase all this down. It's a lot of work.
Weep not for staff, but I do think that this feedback and this discussion right now, of course, I have commissioners that are watching this and just, even though you have taken the vote, the feedback and the discussion is important.
Well, and what's you're just mad in general.
No, I've read a lot about inclusionary zoning recently, and the policy, without zoning liberalization and without opening up the zoning, it doesn't work that well.
Well,
If you don't allow more density, more housing to get built, like, I'm a naturally occurring affordable housing guy. Like, let the housing market rip. Let's do it. But this commission is anti-housing, so
I
don't.
understand, so we should do nothing.
I'm not saying do nothing, but I don't.
You just
think
voted
this
the
isn't
only
gonna
thing
move-
we were gonna do.
Yeah, but this isn't gonna move the needle.
Well, I'm not willing to do nothing
That's
forever.
fine. That's fine.
Anyway, all right.
So,
Um,
I don't know. I don't know that the commission's gonna reconsider the unit count, but I think that it's something to
I
think
think
about.
we oughta-
We could always go with a higher number and then lower it down to 10 when it's super successful and super easy and we know what we're doing.
Well, and I also think we have not adequately analyzed the effect of the Live Local ordinance on affordable housing and how we can utilize that to our benefit.
I would absolutely echo that. I think we're gonna be surprised at what comes forward in
Yeah.
the next year because I
Well,
see it coming.
And despite the criticism of us, I do think we all are committed to trying to do this as quickly as we can. But we're a built-out city, and it takes time to build anything, and I think we need to start. That's my main thing, is we need to start. We can't just wait for the perfect everything. Anyway, we're now just BSing because the meeting is, we're in board
member comment now.
We're in board member comment. And have you had your comment?
No, I was gonna ask,
Well,
I just wanted to ask.
I'm just pushing buttons. You're on.
You're pushing my button right now.
I understand.
You're flashing right there.
That's it. You're
Josh.
flashing away. Now you go. Go.
I'm sorry. I did want to ask about attendance, because it seems like I don't want it to be a problem again where we don't have a quorum.
I
And
do
we have
think,
new members here and we've, not showing up.
I-
When do we evaluate that? How
no,
does staff
no, no,
do it?
no. This is what you do. Mr. Castillo writes Ms. Bell a letter and says, you got to start coming or you're going to be kicked off.
Or at least tell us that you're not gonna be here.
But it's 2 in a
It,
row.
it needs to be expected. I mean, and, it sounds like maybe you heard from Jason tonight. I always give you all as much warning as possible. I mean, even months in advance sometimes, if I know about it, that I'm not gonna be at a
I'm just saying
meeting.
I've never missed a meeting.
So I think people need to have some, respect
Yeah,
for their
you-
position and for staff and for all of our time.
Well, if you've made the commitment, you've made the commitment.
Yeah, you
Like,
can't-
I've made the commitment, even if dumb as I am, I'm gonna show up to every
Yeah.
meeting.
And you can't just live off the glory of being on the plan board.
I can't.
So glorious.
That's a joke, Juan.
More. We do have attendance regulations per our our bylaws. So I'll be sure to connect with Ms. Bell and go over those regulations.
I wish you would. I wish you'd do it
I think
before
it
the
is
next
something
meeting.
like 2 meetings
Yeah, that-
in
Yeah.
6 months, or 2 meetings in a year or something, 2 unexcused absences, which,
And she's
Yeah.
she's missed 2 of her first 3 meetings.
Yeah, I'll connect with Ms. Bell.
And we were pretty charming, as you can see, as always.
Speak for yourself.
Mr. Hall, do you have something?
Hill.
Hill,
It's all right.
why didn't you tell me that?
Trying to be polite.
Stop, I'm not polite. Do you have something to say?
I do.
Oh,
I
go.
do. I just wanted to reiterate a point you made earlier, Bob, and just that, I'm a planner by trade. I do a lot of comprehensive plan work, and I've never written a policy, nor have I ever known a policy that was perfect on its first go-around. And I tend to take the view, and I know some folks may disagree, that comprehensive plans are living, breathing documents. And so we should be constantly reevaluating this as this is implemented, if this is implemented, and if we start really scaring away those boutique, smaller developers of apartments, I hope we amend this. I'm scared that we are. So, but I'm comforted in the fact that this is a living document and that we will be able to revisit this when that time comes.
Dr. Murmer, you get the last comment.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank Mr. Castillo. I wanted to thank Mr. Edelton for all the work they put in to creating this IZ proposal. Also want to thank the members of the Affordable Housing Committee and all the work that they put in, doing all the community engagement, as well as all the members of this board. I know there's been a lot of meetings where we discussed this, even before I got here. I know I can be combative, but I think that it resulted in a good product. This template MOU was great, so this was a big lift. A lot of people were involved, and I want to thank everybody who was involved.
Thank you. We don't have Mr. Edelton.
Please, just by name also, I need to make sure that we recognize our planning lead, Brittany McMullen's contributions to this as well.
Thank you. We do not have a meeting in November. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. The city commission delayed appointing the 3 theoretically open positions on the plan board. And so we will have board elections in December, on December the 14th, which will be our last meeting of the year. Anything else?
I did want to ask one thing, sorry. At our last meeting, I brought up the list of code changes and other code changes that I brought up. I wanted to know if y'all did want to hold a workshop. It was suggested last time to hold a workshop on that. We can go ahead and get it scheduled, really based on your schedule. I would prefer to hold it in this building, but downstairs, rather than, I know the Thomas Center was brought up. The only issue with that is we have to still allow public access, and there's some logistical things with keeping the Thomas Center open. But just wanted to bring that back up and see if you wanted to look at.
I don't think anybody cares where it's held.
Yeah, and another question is, does it need to be like in the evening? Could it be in an afternoon?
No, it doesn't need to be.
Do we have flexibility with that? Because
We have.
I mean, we've had meetings in the Thomas
used to,
Center at
yeah.
lunchtime and in the afternoon before. I mean, this was,
Sure.
back in the before times.
Yeah. Cities
But-
notice of meetings advertised.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't have to be in the evening. I know for the board members though, sometimes it's better to have things in the evenings because you all
Well,
have day jobs.
We were doing lunch, though, and then when the city got poor, we were doing lunchless lunch meetings. And so any of those work for me fine.
Yeah, but if you want to give us some dates, we'll pretty much make any day or time work for you. It's much easier to schedule things not in the auditorium because things are much more open.
Yeah.
But I know we're getting into the holiday season and all that.
Yeah, I'm pretty open except for Mondays. I'm not normally in town on Mondays. So just start suggesting stuff that's convenient
Yeah.
for you and we'll see if we can
Okay.
do it.
Potentially like that week before, want to, like, to give people a little bit of time, the second or third week of November before Thanksgiving. I know
Okay.
the week of Thanksgiving is completely
Yeah,
a
definitely
wash.
not. I was hesitant to say November because I know we just canceled the meeting in November, so I didn't know if you actually wanted any meetings in November.
No, we have to cancel a meeting in November. Well, we've traditionally not had a meeting in November. We've kind of lost our tradition. But that doesn't mean we couldn't have a workshop. I mean, mostly because the fourth Thursday is Thanksgiving.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay?
All right, yeah, well, we'll get an email out on that and pull everyone.
Thank you. We stand adjourned.